What's happening, Rebel Matters family? How are yous? I am sitting on the steps out the back garden of my ma's house in Belfast recording this, and it's going to be a bit of a different podcast. I'm actually sitting right beside the spot in the garden where, when I was about 6, and somebody told me that Neighbours was in Australia, which was down under. I tried to dig a hole all the way to Australia. I didn't get very far, but there's still a wee bit of the hole left actually. I thought I was doing a good job at the time. I'm up in Belfast because I was on duty kind of for the Palestine Community Gym project. You might have remembered from a few weeks ago when the Eurovision Song Contest was being held in Tel Aviv. We had a few fundraising events on around the country. There was the Song for Palestine in Cork, Upstairs Unplugged, which was a massive success. That was a karaoke night organised mostly by Keelan Sherlock. And then there was also the Songs Against Apartheid event, which was up in the Duncairn Centre in Belfast. And as well as that, we had a Lone More event up in Glornamona, as well as a Move for Palestine event. And they were all great successes. And I was just in Belfast to go around and meet the people who organised those events and collect the money from them and thank them from the bottom of all of our hearts for doing those events. And also there was a bit of a balls up on that weekend, which is up here in Belfast, to kind of fix that as well. I organised a lot of stuff to be sent over from the West Bank, handmade goods and crafts, so that we could have a pop-up shop similar to the one that we had down in Cork in December, which was a massive success. But whenever I went to rent a van, the guy in the shop was just about to hand me over the keys for the van, and he says, "Give us your driving licence, sir, and I'll photocopy it for you." And sure, it wasn't my driving licence, 2 years out of date. So no van and no Ainle in Belfast and no pop-up shop. So I was just going around today collecting the stuff which was delivered to a few different spots around Belfast. And now I've got 3 big boxes of Palestinian goods to get back down to Cork. So we're going to have a pop-up shop in Cork very soon, and keep the ear to the ground for details of that. We've got some lovely stuff: ceramics, wine glasses, handmade embroidery, books, the Palestinian cafes, olive oil, and lots of other stuff. So I'm going to organise something to get that stuff sold on for the benefit of the Palestine Community Gym project very soon, and I'll let you know whenever that's happening. The Palestine Community Gym project, it's kind of at a critical stage at the minute. We're working really hard, and the thing has kind of gone into a bit of an overdrive. The team is working kind of around the clock. We're meeting up on most days now on one aspect or another of the project. The fundraising is going on quite well. We've got nearly $5,500 in the GoFundMe, and we've got about 7 or 8 now, I think, in the actual bank account. So we're nearly halfway there to the 30 grand target, and I think we're going to make it. If you want to support it, obviously you can go to the GoFundMe page, which is gofundme.com/westbankgym, and you can also come along to some of the events. We've got the Retro Sweat event coming up on the 15th of June, 2 o'clock in Ackley. We're going to have a kind of 80s stroke 90s dance aerobics class with retro gear, Legra headbands, and a bit of Mr. Motivator and Jane Fonda, as well as a live DJ at Ackley. So you can come along to that there. It's just a donation based event. And then we're getting completely stuck into organising the gym jam. We're just nailing down the lineup and the running order of the day, but that is going to be a class day and night. We're going to have family friendly events during the day in the car park. We're going to have the market during the gym jam as well, some Palestinian goods being sold there. And then we're also going to have a night of music and dance. That'll be more of an over 18s thing from 8 o'clock onwards. So you can just find out about that by keeping in touch with the Palestine Community Gym social media accounts. There's the Palestine Gym on Instagram and Palestine Community Gym on Facebook. So I'm just back from a bit of a walk around, and a walk around Andytown in West Belfast, trying to think about what I was going to talk about today. I haven't got a guest lined up because of how busy we've been with the Palestine Gym in the last couple of weeks, and also with Ainle. So it's just me and you for tonight. Going to give us a little bit of an outdoor podcast. It's the first time I've recorded a podcast by myself outside, and it's 10 o'clock at night, 10 past 10, Thursday night. This is going out on Friday morning. If I can manage to rattle something semi-interesting out for you. And I was just walking around the road, getting the head right, trying to get into the zone for this podcast, and thinking about what I was going to talk about. And I think I want to talk a little bit about social infrastructure. I read this book recently that I've mentioned before on the podcast, Palaces for the People, which is by a guy called Eric Klinenberg. I would highly recommend that book. Basically, he discusses the effects that certain social infrastructures have on communities, health, prosperity, and overall wellness, especially in the face of crisis or emergencies like floods or extreme weather conditions and things like that. And it kind of got me thinking how that compares to some of the infrastructures that I'm familiar with, both here in Belfast, in Cork, and as it relates to the Palestine project. So I think I'd like to talk about that a little bit more, because I think it's really, really interesting. And another thing that kind of came to mind that might be a cool thing to talk about in this podcast is the fitness industry. And I was thinking of maybe doing a bit of a deconstruction on the fitness industry as I say it, and as it relates to the 13 odd years of experience that I have in working in that industry as a student, as an athlete, as a coach, as a lecturer, and as a business owner. I think it's quite a broad range of experience, so I think we'll try for that there. So as I said, it's just me and you for this podcast, so hit the subtitle button if you're not used to my accent and you're not able to figure it out yet. I'm only joking. There is no subtitle button, so you're going to have to do your best. I'll try and speak as slow as I can. So let's give it a wee lash. Let's start off with a bit of a chat on the topic of social infrastructure. So I've just walked from my ma's house, the house that me and both my brothers grew up in Andytown, and I walked about 1 mile down the road to where the Andytown barracks used to be, and then up the Glen Road and back down to my house. And there were a few really, really kind of prominent pieces of social infrastructure, both positive and negative, that I walked past there, and that's what got me thinking about the subjects that I would like to include in this wee podcast. And as I mentioned in the intro, Palaces for the People is the book that got me started off thinking about this kind of stuff as it relates to what we're going to be talking about here. But the social infrastructures that I was thinking of discussing in this podcast are pieces of ground and infrastructure that have been there or not there, and both when they were there and when they're not there have had a big effect on my life, and I guess the lives of people around here as well. And I think it's a good example of how pieces of social infrastructure can relate. The Palaces for the People book is based mostly in America, with a couple of European examples, so I think it might be nice to bring it home a little bit and give some examples of how social infrastructure affected our lives here in West Belfast. And we're right beside the main road here, so I don't know if you can hear the sirens going up and down. Adds a bit of dramatic effect to the outdoor podcast. It'll be interesting to see how this comes out. Let me know what you think about the ambient sounds whenever you're listening to it. Anyway, I was walking down the road, as I was saying, the social infrastructure thing, the whole idea about that is that it's social infrastructures are things that affect communities and affect the health of the people who live around that social infrastructure. Things like libraries, cafes, green areas, sports clubs, flood defences even, or can be social infrastructures also, if they're turned into places where people can meet and that are useful to create interactions and connections between people within the community. And when I was walking down the road here, the Andytown Road, the first major piece of social infrastructure that is actually out of action and decommissioned at the minute is Casement Park. Casement Park is the main GA ground for the Antrim GA team, and a number of years ago they decided that they were going to close it down and rebuild a new stadium, which kind of gave a lot of hope to the area in general, because we thought we were going to be getting a class new stadium that was going to bring more employment and more people and more events and more big matches into the area. But to go back a bit before that, whenever we were kids, Casement Park was like the mecca for anyone around here who played GAA, and the GAA itself is a major piece of the social infrastructure here in West Belfast. You can walk to about 7 clubs right from this house, walk like within 20 minutes, half an hour, walking of here, or even 5 minutes driving from here anywhere. You've got Nave Paul, Rossa, Sarsfields, Nave Trassa, St John, St Galls, Lav Yarrig, and a couple more, the clubs that are knocking around. So they've really served as a major positive piece of the community here in West Belfast. And for everyone who played for those clubs, Casement Park was like the mecca. Every time I was going up and down the road, it's right on the main road, the Andytown Road, and I used to pass it 2, 3, 4 times a day, going to school, coming back from school, going down the road to the shops or going into town or anything like that. You'd always pass it, and every single time there's a little gap in the wall of Casement Park where you could see down a little slope and you could see onto the pitch, and it just made it kind of a bit of a ritual to make sure that I looked in to pay respects to the unbelievable playing ground and stadium of dreams that was Casement Park, and see who was playing there. But even if there wasn't someone playing there, I'd be just looking into it just to kind of pay a bit of homage to it, because it was always the big ambition to play there. And I played there loads of times. Even if there was a team playing there, you could see the scoreboard from the road as well, so you try and catch a glimpse of the scoreboard across the other side of the ground as you were passing in a taxi. And I was always wishing that would be stuck on a wee bit of traffic just as we were passing that split in the road, so I could have a look into it and see if there was someone playing, and see if we could catch the score on the scoreboard, which was away over on the other side. And that kind of, I suppose that was one of the things that really drove me to improve my hurling skills and try and get on the Antrim teams, because the Antrim teams were always playing down there, and I got that chance. I played in Casement Park with the Bunskull Football Forestry when I was in primary school, played there under 12 in the Nipper-Quinn final with St John's against St Paul's, played there with Antrim, got a training session in there with Sean O'Halpine when he came up to visit our school when I was 14, and then ended up becoming friends with him when I moved down to Cork and started playing for the Piercy, and played there under 16 for Antrim, played loads of games, minor, under 21, senior, watched loads of games down there, was there for the 2001 hunger strike commemorations when Christy Moore came and sang Back Home in Derry, and we were all there in the lashing rain commemorating the hunger strikes. And I was there in 2006 again, whenever we had a 25-year anniversary of the hunger strikes, and the people from all around West Belfast came and congregated on Casement Park. And I remember going in there when I was a kid. Joe Rogan's Hurley Factory was up in the stand, and just getting in there and getting the smell of sawdust and being able to speak to the absolute giant that Joe Rogan was, up there making hurleys, and being able to get hurley fixed in there, or order a couple of hurleys, or going down to pick hurleys up, or even just talking about hurleys and seeing them getting made, was an unbelievable experience as a young lad, 12, 13 years old, going down there and being able to do that just basically at the doorstep. And I think that when you look at what that did for the people in the community and the young people like me around, it really kept us out of trouble, kept us with a spirit of kind of motivation and ambition to get into Casement Park, to be playing there and to be able to walk on the pitch and hopefully be victorious with our teams in there. And what's after happening subsequently is that there was basically a very inadequate consultation process, if any, of a consultation process with the local residents around Casement Park, and the plans that were made were completely completely not sort of appropriate, or what the hell is the word I'm thinking of? Now Orstonak is the word in Irish. Unsuitable. The plans were completely unsuitable for the roads infrastructure and the parking, and it was going to have a major negative impact on the residents around the area. So of course there were big protests, and we're no strangers to having a protest around this part of the world, and the residents stepped up and blocked the plans. And it wasn't just the residents in the immediate locality, but anyone with half a brain would have known that the Casement Park plans initially were unsuitable for the place that they were trying to put that stadium into. So the plans got put on hold between one thing and another, and that's been going on for a few years now. And now Casement Park is an absolute shambles. The grass is up, I'd say, over hip height. The pitch is completely closed off, and it's just fallen down. It's in a state of complete disrepair. Everyone, like, nobody's ambitions are to play in Casement Park now. The young people haven't got the same carrot and stick as we had whenever we were kids, and I think that must be having a major negative impact on young people. Maybe they don't even know that's having a negative impact on them, but they certainly haven't got the positive influence that Casement Park gave to us, and even the ability to go down and watch matches down there. I was down there in the early 90s watching that team, the Antrim team that got to the 1989 All-Ireland final, Sambo, Woody, and all those people that were giants back in the day playing in Casement Park, and remembering thinking to myself, that's going to be me someday. I'm going to get on the Antrim team. And that's a massively positive thing for young people to aspire to, and that just isn't there anymore. So that just kind of got me thinking of both sides of how that physical space became something that massively influenced the social connections within our community, and that it's not there anymore. And I mean, this podcast, it's not the intention to be pointing the finger or giving out to anybody, but people need to get their fucking finger out and get Casement Park back opened up for the people of West Belfast, for Antrim GAA, and also for the people who are living around Casement Park, because who wants a flipping overgrown, falling down around you stadium and pitch right in your back garden? Nobody. So it's time we get that place back open again. But that was the first part of the first kind of social infrastructure thing that I passed on my way down the road, and then walked down a little bit further, and it came to a piece of social infrastructure, a piece of physical infrastructure that had a major influence on the community in every way, shape or form, that when it was there was a massive negative influence, and now that it's not there, it's more of a positive place. I've got a picture of it actually, and it's the site of the old Andytown Barracks, which was an absolute scar on the face of West Belfast, this massive garrison with big boulders in front of it, and it was like a big concrete building in the shape of a triangle right at the junction between the Falls Road, or between the Andytown Road, the Falls Road and the Glen Road, and right outside Milltown Cemetery, if anybody's familiar with that. And it was huge, a big concrete building with metal sort of a layer and fence above the concrete part, and then another mesh above that, massive surveillance towers climbing up out of the barracks, and one of those big massive sliding doors that you see in prison whenever someone's getting out of jail in a movie like the Blues Brothers, where the big massive metal door just slides across one of those doors, and they'd have the Union Jack up there all the time, and the cops and the army would be in and out with their armoured cars. It had boulders all along the front, and it had to stop people from ramming into it and attacking it. That was just my mum coming out to say hello there. Hopefully she doesn't lock me out in the back garden here. And every time we walked past it, we just had this sense of being watched, being occupied, and it was a sense of hatred towards the people that were in there and that were doing this occupation, and that were after taking a part of our community's land and putting their army into it. And I mean, it's not as if the cops back then in the 90s, 80s, 90s early 2000s were even doing anything useful, because there's loads of stuff happened around here. It was like the Wild West back then with antisocial behaviour, and if you called the cops back then to come out because somebody was stealing your car, breaking into your house, they wouldn't even come out. They wouldn't want to. They would more likely come out and hang out with the joyriders and people who are stealing cars to befriend them and nearly encourage them to create more damage in the community or try and turn them into informers. So nothing positive came out of that place. And then in the early 2000s, I can't remember what year exactly it was, but I must have been about 18 or something like that, when they decided that the army and the cops moved out of there. They closed the barracks down and eventually it got demolished. And at the time, actually, I must have been in first or second year of university at the time, because I was working in Ainle in the Culturland for the summer with my dad. And we were walking up the Falls Road, and my dad, Ainle Ó Cairealláin, started thinking that he should organise something on the grounds of the barracks. And it was just after getting knocked down that week. The rubble was still actually on the ground. Part of it, most of it was taken away, but there were still pieces of brick and stuff and stone laying on the ground where the barracks did stand. And we walked up to the neighbour who was actually neighbouring right beside. There's actually an ant crawling on my computer here. The neighbour who lived beside the barracks site, and asked him if we could use electricity from his house if we were to organise a bit of a ceilidh on the ground of the barracks. And in my head at the time, I was thinking, this sounds like a good idea, but I don't know if we're going to be able to pull it off. And he organised to get a ceilidh band to come down, and the standard banantee for ceilidhs around here is, of course, Moira Ní Bhruaidhar. So we got Moira to come down. I bought a gazebo down in B&Q, and we popped it up on the ground just in case it was raining. And then Eamon O'Keenan, or Eddie Keenan, who's passed away now, came down and to sing Or on the Vein. So we were there. It was a really nice day, but there was a ceilidh band there. Eamon was there, Moira Ní Bhruaidhar was there. There was about 5 or 6 of us there ready for the ceilidh, but nobody else. And then the band struck up. I went over to Curly's to get some crisps and water and stuff like that to try and attract people in. I stole the trolley from Curly's, wheeled it back over, and then when the ceilidh band started, the McInerney's pub, or the Gravediggers as it's known, loads of people were kind of drinking outside of that because the weather was quite sunny, and they came across, and within about half an hour there was about 200 people dancing this big ceilidh on the ground of one of the places that was the most negative places in the whole of West Belfast for all of us, for many, many reasons. And it was kind of like a reclaiming of the land. Eamon O'Keenan sang Or on the Vein on the grounds of that barracks, and anyone who would have known Eddie will know the significance of that moment. And we danced the absolute shit out of it, with Moira Ní Bhruaidhar doing banantee for a few hours that day. And for me, it's a really defining moment of reclaiming land that was taken from us and that was used for very negative purposes. So that's another piece of infrastructure that had a very negative impact on the community while it was there, and a more positive impact now. It's got kind of a bit of a garden there now, and it's used as a site for murals, and there's been the location for a few sit-out protests and stuff like that, and it's in a really visible place at the junction. So it's nice that piece of land has been reclaimed by the community. So I was walking up the road further. I went up the Glen Road then. Where am I going to next? I'm going up the road and walked down Bingham Drive and up to the Glassmullen Green, which is a big council ground right around the corner from where we live, in the house that we grew up in. And it actually used to be the site for the biggest barracks in the whole of the 6 counties. The barracks was called Silver City, and it was so big that it blocked out all the light for the houses, all the natural sunlight for the houses that were around it. It was closed down before we moved down here, so I don't have any direct experience of the Silver City barracks, but I heard a lot of things about it, and I've seen pictures of it and how big the walls were. And this pitch is huge, so I can just imagine how big it was, how big it looked, and how imposing it was whenever the barracks was there. And I'm not sure if this is 100% true, but I haven't verified it. But someone did tell me that our street, which is just around the corner from here, from where I'm talking about, the Glassmullen Green, is actually a cul-de-sac. And someone told me before that the Brits actually blocked our street off and made it into a cul-de-sac so that there would be less roads leading up to the barracks. So it seems quite plausible. I'll have to just get someone to verify that for me. So if anyone out there who's listening to this knows, drop me a message and let me know if you think that's true or not. But anyway, this green was an absolute lifesaver for us. It was where we spent day and night hurling around. Like, loads of times we'd be pucking around up there, organising games between ourselves, having fights with each other as well, just to sort out our differences. And there'd be people that are walking their dogs. Loads of funny stories from up there. One day, this absolute mental dog who had rabies or something chased me and Carbra while we were up there having a few pucks, and we had to run into someone's house. It was quite a scary moment. But quite a few times when we were up there, the British Army would start a patrol across the green, and then we'd have good target practice trying to hit them with the slitter, and we definitely connected a few times. And on a few other occasions, helicopters would come down. One time, a big Chinook helicopter, was one of those helicopters with the 2 rotors on top of it. They're big personnel carriers, landed into the pitch, and loads of soldiers jumped out and started a patrol. Such was the times back then. But the importance of Glassmullen Green, this council ground, it's just an open ground for young people in the area to play, meet together, practice their skills. There used to be a camogie team, Deirdre, that used to train up there as well, and we trained there a few times with the school and stuff like that when there was no other pitch available. But the importance of that type of ground that's open access, it's free, and there's no restrictions as to who can go there or what time you can go there, is massive. And what they're actually trying to do now is I think they're trying to build some sort of a closed off 5-a-side facility there. I think one of the local schools is after purchasing the ground, or they've been given the ground, and they're going to build a big fence around it and make it into a more of a pay-as-you-go facility or something like that. And there is a campaign in around this area to not let that happen, and I think that's a crucial campaign. As social infrastructure goes, having these green areas where people can just go and walk their dogs, hang out, play, and do whatever they want to do has a massive impact on, I would say, the lives of young people, because they have somewhere to go. It relieves pressure from families because people don't have to be cooped up inside, and there is somewhere relatively safe for kids to go and hang out. And it has a big impact on mental health as well, because you've got a place where you can go and do your recreational activities without having to pay any money, or without having to have any roadblocks. And putting a paywall or even putting a physical fence up is going to hinder that one way or another. So that's another piece of social infrastructure that had a massive positive influence on our lives when we were kids, and potentially is going to not be there for young people as well. And if that does happen, if places like that become pay-as-you-go facilities, then that's just another way of commodifying the people that live around those facilities, of getting a little bit more money out of people who live in the local area. And that's maybe a good place to lead on to the next topic that I thought would be interesting to discuss as part of this podcast, which was the kind of deconstruction of the health and fitness industry, because that is totally based on the commodification of people and the exploitation of the potential clients or customers. And I think that may be a good thing to discuss a little bit, especially because of my experience and my own sort of professional involvement in strength and conditioning and coaches. To put that into a bit of context, as I mentioned earlier, I have been working in this area for about the last 13 years. I did studied sports studies in St Mary's Christian Brothers School from A levels, and then went on to do a degree in sports and exercise science in UL. Then went into study and started a PhD course in UL, which I actually didn't finish because by the time I'd done 2 years of it, first of all the jobs that I had got cut because the recession kicked in, but I knew I didn't want to be in the academic life as a career. So I just did a master's in research instead in biomechanics and strength and conditioning. I worked over in Australia for the best part of a year with the Adelaide Crows football team, trained the Cork football team when I was down in Cork, worked for setting up a strength and conditioning facility for Na Piarsaigh, lectured for Satanta College, set up Ainle, of course, 6 years ago this year, and I still go up and down to UL once or twice a year to do talks, guest lectures for the sports and exercise science students up there. So I think that's after giving me quite a broad range of experience, especially with the last 6 years of Ainle. There's a helicopter there now as well. You're getting the full West Belfast experience. There's a helicopter flying above the house, really looking down, checking out what we're doing down here. Yep, we're talking about you lads. Back off. Hopefully they don't stay too long. Interrupting our podcast here, lads. The fuck. I think there's actually 2 helicopters there. Anyway, let's carry on. The show must go on. What were we talking about there? Yes, the health and fitness industry. Right. Oh, a couple of people. Sorry about this now, lads. We just fuck off. We just give them a second to get out of the way. Whenever me and one of my brothers, Carbra, started training with weightlifting, and Olympic weightlifting in particular is kind of where we started off with our strength and conditioning properly. We heard that there was a weightlifting club down in Beachmount Leisure Centre on the Falls Road, and one day we rocked up in there, and who was in charge of this weightlifting club but the late and great Eddie Finnegan. I don't know if there's much about him online, but when we started training with him, he was about 80 years old and apparently had a couple of records, masters, and was a weightlifting coach for years and years and years. He told us he used to have about 60 people in the big hall down at Beachmount Leisure Centre doing Olympic weightlifting, and his favourite exercise was the good morning exercise, where you would put a bar on your shoulders and kind of, if you don't know it, it kind of looks like a deadlift, except the bar's on top of your shoulders instead of on the ground, where you push your hips back and you kind of fold over at the hips, keeping your chest out, and it's a massive exercise for the glutes and the hams, and a really good one for building overall strength. And he said he did so many good mornings that he was coming out of the leisure centre one time after doing a session, and these lads jumped on him and he was able to just pop them off his back because he was so strong. But Eddie was a great guy to train with, real old school guy. He used to get us to do 10 sets of 10 and just about every exercise you can think of. We'd been there for over 3 hours training. Proper old school. There was no music allowed in that gym, and he said, "Are you here to listen to music, or are you here to train?" I'm just moving around a little bit there, getting pins and needles in my leg. And zero tolerance drug policy in that place. It was the most no nonsense place I've ever trained. It was actually in a converted squash course. There's one of those tiny little doors, and there was no windows, no radio, and the weights were just popped up along the side around the corner of the floor. Loads of padding on the floor to protect it, and one squat rack, one bench, and then the rest was just floor space for doing the Olympic weightlifting exercises. That's kind of where we started off from. Then I went into the weightlifting club down in UL. That was kind of a really great period, a golden period in the weightlifting in UL. That's kind of when we started the weightlifting club back then, around 2004. And another old school guy who I spoke about quite a lot on the podcast is Mick the Iron Man Murphy, who I met in 2010 down in Kerry, and well worth going back and listening to the bits of recordings that I've got with him on the podcast. So where are we going to start with this here? I suppose if we go back to the start of the founding of Ainle, because that's when I started becoming more aware of the way that, quote unquote, you're supposed to do things when it comes to promoting a business and promoting yourself as a coach. And even from starting off, getting the business off the ground, that would be a good place to go from. And we could also, I think it's important that we frame what we have in Ireland. I mean, and I suppose by and large in the Western world as well, like we have got a quote unquote obesity problem. And I say quote unquote obesity problem because what in actual fact, the obesity is more likely a symptom of the problem being that we have this absolute abundance of shite food and a kind of sedentary lifestyle that is, that has been designed for us so that we just work more and eat more shit, buy more shit, and be sicker so that we can fund, or that we can keep on being customers of the health industry, I guess, medical industry as well. We have got a massive mental health issue, which you could argue is contributed to because of the lack of connection and lack of sense of purpose that we have with each other, which could also be contributed to or attributed to the kind of breaking down of community infrastructures, a little bit like what we just talked about with the social infrastructure stuff. And that Palaces of the People book would be a really good place to learn a little bit more about that. We were not active enough, and that is true, but that is, for me, also a symptom of the lifestyle that we've kind of been corralled into, of being sitting behind desks and paying off debts, or being in jobs that really don't get us outside and keep us locked up inside as commodities, working for the big companies and making loads of money for other people and maintaining quite low levels of health ourselves. This is all, like, generally speaking. Of course, it's not blanket. We're just having more of a casual chat here than anything else. And we also have a lot of back pain. There are some of the main problems, and the back pain has been commodified as well when you think about it. MRIs are big business here, medication for back pain, surgeries for back pain, and other sort of orthopedic problems as well, like hip problems, are epidemic in the GAA now, and you could say. And I guess that kind of sets the scene for advertising to be done. We're being advertised at, and I know personally from reading the material that is out there for learning about business and the business courses, that the way that the advertising world and the marketing world works is that you highlight the problem. You say, okay, you have an obesity problem, you're overweight, and then you make it as personal as possible, and you kind of drill down and say, how does this make you feel? How does this impact your life? And then the person starts to feel worse about the problem that you're after highlighting for them. Then you show that you have the solution for this problem, but there's only a limited amount of places, only 6 places left, or this offer's only going to last for 1 week. And then you fire some social proof at the person that you're marketing to. Like, you say, look, this is the before and after, this is what this person did, look how well they're after, and this could be you. And then you make them an irresistible offer, and you sell it to them, and you get them in. And at the end of the day, advertising is about selling, and marketing is about selling as well. We'll have this pressure to look a certain way, also creating unattainable goals and making it sort of like too good to be true. That's what advertising is about. We're being sold stuff in the health and fitness industry that's based on building up our insecurities, or creating insecurities that we didn't even have in the first place, like putting up pictures of people with 6 packs and be like, this could be you, or 6 weeks to like your beach body, or drop such and such amount of weight in 12 weeks. And the attraction for that for us is that we have this desire to be healthier and to be fitter, and that's sort of a primal instinct. None of us want to be unfit, and it's not to say that you can't become leaner and stronger, move better and be more pain-free and have a more active lifestyle. You can do those things, and with the right approach and the dedication to it and a bit of a commitment to see it through for long enough to see positive results, then you can definitely do that. I'm not saying that it can't be done, but it can't be done on the back of this kind of really superficial or exploitative marketing and advertising. That's something that we've really, really tried to absolutely not do, and not only not do it, but put ourselves forward in a more positive way. And instead of trying to knock people down just so that they can buy our stuff, we're trying to like bring people together and build people up, and that comes with that brings great results. It does bring great results, but on the face of it, a lot of the time it seems that it's not as sexy, because we're up sexy, quote unquote, because we're up against the people who are using all those kind of underhanded strategies of playing on people's insecurities to get them into, to get us in to buy shitty products, shitty training programs. And then the other thing is that, as Dan John says quite often, anything works, even the worst type of training program. If you do it, if you're going from being sedentary to doing something on a regular basis, if you believe in it and you do it consistently, even if it's not the best, it is still going to work. And the trick for us is, and the trick for all of us, like collectively, me and you guys that are listening, is to do the things that are going to give us the most benefit and the things that are the most genuine and are going to give results for the long term. And I think that the results, it's not just about how you end up looking, it's about what you learn in the process and the value that you carry forward with what you've learned into the coming months and years and the rest of your life. And a lot of the times, like, you're not going to get that from buying some shitty supplement or doing some stupid training program that's been marketed by a celebrity and that's been boosted by these before and after pictures, and that's popping up on their social media account flat out to try and get you in because there's only 6 spaces left and then the offer's going to finish next week. All that stuff is absolute bullshit. Like, don't buy into that. And as well as being bullshit, it doesn't give any long-term value. All the main objective in that thing is to get you to buy the shit. After that, it doesn't really matter what happens of it. If enough people do it, some people are going to get results and they're going to be on the next before and after pictures. But for every one person who's on a before and after picture, how many people are kind of get that snapback effect where you go hell for leather for a few weeks and then you fall off the wagon and then get to a worse place than you started from in the first place. And I have this thing in my head that I know is going to apply. Like, I'm trying to learn the guitar at the minute, and I think that it's better to do it from the beginning. I'm getting some lessons, doing some online lessons instead of trying to learn it by myself. And know, like, in a year's time, if I don't do it the right way, I'll be sitting thinking, why did I not do the lessons from the day one? Because now look how far I would be ahead now, instead of trying to wing it and do it myself and do something that was ineffective at the beginning. Do it the right way the first time round, do it once, do it properly. And I think that's a better way to approach our health. And another thing that always does my head in about the health and fitness industry is how nutrition is approached, especially in gyms, because a lot of gyms stock nutritional supplements, and for me, like, it's a complete conflict of interest for a gym to be stocking nutritional supplements and trying to give nutritional advice, because you're always going to get the recommendation of just buy this supplement. Oh yeah, you want some nutrition advice? Well, first of all, you should buy this supplement that we're stocking because it's really important for your health. And that's bullshit as well. That's based on making more profit from us as people, as customers, and as kind of commodities for the people who are selling the stuff. And nutrition comes down to the very basics of drinking enough water, cook once per day, and eat 3 square meals. Bring a packed lunch to work or to college or wherever you're going the next day. And if you do those basic things, then you can drill down a little bit. Try and designate your treat day to 1 day. Treat in commas, because eat whatever you want, but we're all adults. We can eat whatever we want. But if you want to drill down and tighten up on the food and eat less sugary food or less sort of unhealthy food as such, then just do it on 1 day and aim towards that day. You can eat your highest carbohydrate count meal either side of your training session, before or after. And the bike's just going up the road there again, interrupting the podcast. And you can control your portion sizes. Precision Nutrition is a great resource, precisionnutrition.com. You can go there. There's loads of blogs, articles and stuff like that you can go and read about the nutrition. But overall, the nutrition approach to get real results is very basic. It's about doing those basic things consistently. Then you just need to build a regular strength and conditioning or strength and movement training practice and have high general activity levels. Breaking this down very, very simply here, but it kind of highlights the point that we don't need to be soul shit to be healthy. What makes our what makes us stick to something for long enough to get the results include having a clearly defined objective, like a goal, or having a purpose, like you want to get fit because you want to be able to walk the Camino or climb a mountain or spend more time playing with your kids. And then that really gives you a big boost of motivation, a motivation that'll carry you through the shitty times. Because that's the thing with those kind of quick fix programs, is they might provide enough before and after pictures and bullshit testimonials to get you through the first 6 weeks of doing something that's absolutely insane, but you're not going to be able to keep that going forever because life gets in the way. And if you have a clearly defined objective or purpose and the motivation at the beginning and a sensible way and a sensible approach and a sustainable approach to training, then that's going to keep you going for way longer than some shitty product that you're after buying online because of the advertising and the marketing. You have to trust the path that you're on so that you can see it through for long enough. And for me, that comes down to the expertise of the people that you're getting the information from, the coaches, and also other people that have been in a similar situation to you, that have come through the process as well and that have had the success. That is an important part of it. And another crucial aspect is to have the social support around other people who are going through the same kind of process as you're going through, the social support with those people, advice from someone that you trust to help get you through the hard times whenever the shit hits the fan, and whenever you fall off course, to help you get you back on course. And another thing that's really important to keeping going on the track, on the right path for long enough to get the results, is having minimal roadblocks to your participation. So that's putting the time aside for your training and knowing that you have that time kind of booked out, and that's the time you're going to be working on your goals, whatever they may be, whether it's fitness related, music related, or training in the gym, training outside. That you have the facility to go to it, you have the ability to go to your facility quite easily, that you don't have to trek the whole way across town to get to the place, or that it's not too expensive for you to go to it, or that that you just have the access to the facilities that you need to make your goal happen, and you have access to the place that you need to spend the time in to make it happen, and then you know what to do. I suppose the big thing about keeping on track, one of the big things for me anyway, which is why I kind of write my programs in advance of going into the gym for a session, is that you want to avoid decision fatigue. You don't want to be going in somewhere and being like, what am I going to do today? What do I have to eat? What am I going to eat tomorrow? It's about keeping it simple and then following through with that. So that's maybe an alternative kind of approach to getting sucked into that exploitative kind of advertising and marketing trap. As well as that, actually, just to relate this back to the first half of the podcast about the social infrastructures, gyms should be a kind of social infrastructure in of themselves. That's exactly where the Palestine Community Gym project has come from. It's not just about having a physical infrastructure where there's weights and the place, whatever the equipment is there. It's about creating the social infrastructure where people come together. And a big thing for us and for me, which you don't get in commercial gyms, is the connections that are built within the walls of the training facility. For me, the most important connections that happen are the connection that you make with yourself when you're training, that you're learning how to use your body again, you're feeling what feels good, what feels bad, and you can feel yourself getting fitter. There's the connection that you make with other people that are training there at the same time, and there's the connection you make with the coach. I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but I just keep coming back to it because it's such an important thing, and it's in such contrast to how commercial gyms are set up. When you think about it, commercial gyms are just set up based on a business model of getting a high volume of members to come in, mostly that sign up in the first week of January. The vast majority don't ever use it or use it very seldom, and we're all signed up then to direct debits. But even that thing about the connection, there's no social infrastructure there to create those connections. You don't really connect with anybody who's working there because they just buzz you in and you have to go off and do your own thing. You don't connect with the other people that are using the facility because everyone's on their phones or on treadmills or just going off doing their own things with their headphones in, which is something that we made a conscious effort and actually not to have. There's no screens, there's people don't wear headphones, and we're always kind of like in one way or another interacting together, whether it's in a really one-to-one way or in a more subtle way, but they're all in there training together. And there's the connection that you make with the coach, that you're building a relationship with someone who's helping you through the process. That's really important as well. And the result of that really is that you end up with a training method that promotes learning and productivity and I guess it's a process that you're going through as opposed to just being in a facility and you just do whatever you want. And when you're in that place, when you're in the place of productivity and going through a process, it's way easier to stick the course for that in that way, to follow through until you get the results, compared to just being in a gym by yourself where you don't really know what you're doing. You're getting decision fatigue, and even though there's loads of other people there, you're not making any connection with them, which can be a very lonely thing, a very lonely situation to be in. And of course, commercial gyms can be a great resource for some people if you know what you're doing and you just go in and zone out for a while and then get out again. But for me, it doesn't really promote the whole social infrastructure philosophy, which is kind of one of the main reasons why I'm involved in Ainle, why I set Ainle up to be something of a different facility, and also a big reason why we're working on this Palestine Community Gym project. So what do you think about that? That was a bit of a rant about the fitness industry, and we've nearly been going for over 50 minutes now. Hope you're still here listening and enjoying it, and enjoying the ambient sounds of West Belfast as well. Oh, another thing that I wanted to maybe discuss on the podcast is how come we compartmentalize the different aspects of health so much and then try and sell them all on as individual things. For example, commercial gyms are selling the health, the fitness part of health, the how much can you lift, how much, how far can you run, or how fast can you run. And then there's other parts of health that I think are very important, like the way that we communicate together, the way that like learning, that's why we have the book club. Food is a massive part of health, and how the relationships that we have with food, and that's compartmentalized as well, in that like you go to a dietitian for your food advice, you go to the gym for your fitness advice, you go to the library for your books, or you buy your books off Amazon, and then you go to the bar for your socializing. And I don't know really why we've broken them all down into such individual components and trying to sell them all off as separate things, because for me, like, health is one whole thing that has got different elements, but that's something that we try and get under the same roof at Ainle. And I'm not doing this podcast to promote Ainle, it's just something that really interests me and is also relative to the whole idea of social infrastructure. So that's just another little point, and maybe a good point to finish up on. It is 11 o'clock at night. I'm still sitting outside my ma's back garden, beside where I tried to dig the hole to Australia, with a half full bottle of cider, getting my legs absolutely ate to pieces by these ants that are all around the place. There's a few of them on the screen right now. So I am going to wrap this podcast up. Let me know what you thought about that stuff. I think that I would like to open up the conversation further about some of the stuff that we discussed on the podcast here. If you're still not used to my accent and you didn't understand anything, you can drop me a message as well, and I'll maybe try and clarify some of the points that were lost in translation. And that's it. What episode are we on now? Episode 47 of the Rebel Matters podcast, done and dusted. 3% left on the battery, and I'm going to go and get the train back to Cork tomorrow morning. So I'll be on the train for about 5 hours. Let me know what you think about the podcast if you're listening to it on Friday or any other day for that matter. And Ainle Ó Cairealláin a chara gura míle maigat as a bheith geisteacht cinní fiare. Go to the Patreon for this podcast and support it with a monthly subscription if you would like to do so. It is patreon.com, and then find the Rebel Matters podcast there. Give us a like and review wherever you're listening to the podcast. Share it on your social media. Drop me a message. Get in touch. And be nice to each other. I think that's it now. So, EOI, Banach J, Kenny Fury. slán go fáil agus chocaí ar lá.